Hey, everybody. My name is Cassandra Finch, and I guide professionals into their divine gifts and into their soul knowledge so that they can align their businesses and their mission to create impact and relieve burnout and missed opportunities and so much more. But what I'm here to talk to you today is a little story time. It was something that happened when I was about 12 years old, and I'm finally able to actually speak to it now without actually crying and tearing up and things like that. But in one of my previous videos on TikTok here, what I had alluded to in that video was just some intuitive messages that I had gotten after my uncle had been in the hospital and I knew he was going to pass, things to that nature. So I'm going to dive into that story a little bit. And if you want to go to my video and actually see it, it's just a short little 30-second video. It was just the messages from heaven, and that just really brought up this experience that I had. So I wanted to share that experience with you because I know many people have intuitive experiences. It is quite normal. Most people are scared of precognition, and these can be the reasons why. And I understand that. But all things considered, I never would have pushed my intuition away, regardless of that fact. Regardless of some of the things that I get that I'm like, ugh, you know, it is a little scary sometimes. It is a little weird to be able to tune into certain things, but these are just different timelines that you're witnessing. And from what I've noticed, that some of them can actually collapse, some of them cannot, and that's okay. But really, what it's helped me do is just prepare for what is to come, right? So you can't always change everything around you. All you can do is change your response and your reactions to what's actually happening. So going back to when I was 12, my uncle had gone in for a day surgery. He was supposed to be released the same day, hence day surgery, but he wasn't released that day. They kept him under observation. He was in a lot of pain. So when we went to go see him, I remember walking into the room and just feeling his pain. I remember just feeling like, oh, something isn't right. Something feels really wrong here. And I actually told my mom. Any precognition stuff I've ever gotten, I've always told my mom. She's always been the person I could go to, even if in my family, I was told for a long time that these things don't exist, just ignore it, blah, blah, blah. But I still told her. And there was a part of me that's like, someone needs to do something. So I was really scared. And I told my mom, I said, I think he's going to die. Something's really wrong here. And she's like, I have similar feelings. It's okay. I'm going to talk to the nurses. And she did many times. And while she was doing that, my other aunt was there and she had her young kids. So my cousin, just a toddler at the time, getting restless, of course. He was only 2 or 3 maybe at that time. So I decided to take him for a walk. And we went out of that room, we went down the hall, we went to the last door on the right. It was empty, and we just walked in there, and immediately I could smell what I can only describe of as death. It was a gross smell. I felt very anxious. My heart started to race, and I felt really awful in that room, and there was no reason to. No one was in there. It was clean, you know, all the beds were made, the lights were off, and I just felt sick to my stomach. I knew I had to get out of that room. So I quickly took my cousin's hand and was like, let's go this way. And we went out of that room. And I could never just go back into that room. So we avoided that space while we were there. And I couldn't figure out why. I'm like, what is it with that room? Like, what is it? But unfortunately, what happened and what came next was my uncle did pass in the middle of the night. And let me just explain that he was really young, mid-30s, day surgery, there was complications, he passed. So we got the call the next morning while we were making breakfast. And I'll never forget, I just froze because I knew. I knew as soon as the phone rang, immediately what popped into my head was he died. I know he passed. And I'll never forget it because it was the morning that my dad was making breakfast and they just turned everything off and went to the hospital. So when we finally went with them to the hospital to actually say our goodbyes, The room that he was placed in for us to say our goodbyes was that room at the end of the hall on the right. And I'll never forget it because it just clicked. It clicked for me why that felt so weird. And when it comes to people passing, I've done a lot of help actually over the years as an adult helping people pass. And I've really considered becoming a death doula because it is one of my favorite things. But I just remember thinking, oh, that was me kind of tuning in to what was to come. And I didn't know how to decipher any of those feelings. All I knew was, let's get out of here because this is really uncomfortable. I didn't know what it meant, but in that moment, I knew. I knew exactly why I had those feelings. And it was really uncomfortable. And it wasn't the first time that this has happened. I've had dreams of being at people's funerals. I could see everything that they wore. And of course, within a couple of weeks, it comes to pass. Do I get it with everyone? Absolutely not. I've been blindsided by other people who have passed. And it's interesting though, because of how many times it has happened in my life. I had so many of my family members actually coming to me asking about how I felt about this person being sick or what was going to happen here, as I was older, of course, not when I was a kid, because it's not really an appropriate thing to place on a child. But it was more when I was an adult. Everyone always asked for my feelings and my opinions on things. And even now, people come to me for advice with their health and things to that nature. It's wild to me, but that experience is one that I'll never be able to get out of my mind. And just what I saw from him in that room, like it didn't look like him, but all I could see was white sparkles everywhere. Like the room was super bright. It was just the most interesting experience I've ever had. So other people in the family had other experiences in that room later that I didn't have, but I could literally see, to me, what looked like, you know, the diamond shimmers everywhere. It felt very angelic at the time. There was just a lot of love in that room at that time, even though it was a really hard experience. So I think that helped for me to really move through those feelings that I was having a couple days ago. But still, it took me a long time to process his passing. He was a very deep masculine anchor for me, someone that I looked up to and I completely adored and trusted my life. And losing him was really, really difficult, but it was a really neat experience. And even though a lot of it was scary and I was pretty young, I still wanted to share that with you guys. And I'm probably going to start sharing a lot more of the experiences that I've had, the good, the bad. I don't consider anything to be bad. I mean, it's all just information, right? When you look at it like that, it's all just information. We can't always change the circumstances outside of us, but again, we can change how we respond, how we react. And instead of taking this as a self-blame, like I could have done more, I knew this was going to happen, I could have changed the events. I truly believe that many people have their specific set point in which they are free to go. He had so many times in his life where he almost died up until now. So it was amazing that he was around for all that time, even though he was only in his mid 30s. So when it comes to your intuitive gifts, don't sink into the fear of what if, what if, what if. Don't sink into I could have done more, because truly there's so much outside of us that we cannot control. People choose their own timelines as well, right? We can't always influence or affect people in that way. Sometimes we can, but not always. So we can't take all of this as a personal thing, as a failure, because there's only so much that we can do as one being. So all we can do is just be in our truth, know that this information is here for us, and it's more than just the negative, right? So really start to work with your own sense of safety within your own intuitive gifts, because truly they are gifts, even though they can be hard to decipher sometimes, even though they can be very uncomfortable. So that is my words of wisdom around it. I know it might not help in the moment when you're dealing with hard things, but I would love to hear some of your guys' experience in the comments too. Anything cool that you've experienced that is completely unexplainable. And I would love to hear that in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.